Can you imagine being dismissed by everyone just because of your appearance? Sarah Mitchell, a humble woman in a worn cardigan, walked into a prestigious math symposium and was mocked by the elite Professor Harrington. But what happened next? She did the unthinkable, challenged his impossible equation, and left the entire room in awe. The quiet worker, underestimated by all, was about to rewrite the rules of mathematics in front of their eyes. Want to know how? Stick around to see how Sarah turned the tables and transformed her future in the most unexpected way.
Can you imagine the courage it took for Sarah Mitchell, a humble woman in a worn gray cardigan, to step into that buzzing lecture hall at Texas State University? She moved quietly, almost invisibly, but oh, how she was about to turn that room upside down when the elite Professor Richard Harrington, with his silver beard and tailored blue suit, challenged her to solve an equation he deemed impossible. The audience smirked. They thought they were in for a show, but what they got? A slice of mathematics history and the most jaw-dropping comeuppance that university had ever witnessed. The lecture hall thrummed with anticipation as Harrington strode to the podium, his reputation as a distinguished mathematician and department head casting a long shadow. Known for his icy disdain for anyone he considered beneath him, he was a force to be reckoned with. Sarah, at 37, slipped into the back row, her fingers smoothing the edges of her simple gray cardigan over a crisp white blouse. She stood out among the sea of graduate students, but blending in, that wasn't her goal. She was there to soak up knowledge, to feed her hungry mind. Could she have known what was coming? Today's symposium will tackle Riemann's hypothesis and its implications for quantum computing, Harrington declared, his voice slicing through the chatter, demanding instant silence. His piercing eyes swept the room, pausing on Sarah for a heartbeat. His lips twitched disapproval, plain as day. She knew that look all too well. The same dismissive glance she'd gotten 3 years ago when she applied for the university's maintenance staff job. Did it sting? Of course, but Sarah had learned to let it roll off her. The symposium kicked off with doctoral candidates presenting their work. And Sarah? She was in her element, scribbling meticulous notes, her eyes sparkling with every mention of mathematical theories. When the floor opened for questions, her hands stayed down. Why? Because life had taught her that people like her maintenance workers, single moms, weren't supposed to speak in rooms like this. During a break, she overheard 2 students whispering, "Who's the cleaning lady with the notebook?" One sneered, "Probably just here for some continuing ed credits." The other scoffed, "Harrington can't stand when non-math folks show up." Sarah's grip tightened on her notebook, but her face stayed calm. They had no idea that mathematics was her lifelong friend, that she'd taught herself advanced calculus during sleepless nights while raising her daughter alone. Could they even imagine the equations that swirled in her mind when she closed her eyes? When the symposium resumed, Harrington took the stage, presenting his bold approach to an unsolved mathematical problem. His explanation was smooth, elegant, almost perfect, but Sarah spotted it instantly. A tiny flaw, a crack in his logic. She'd wrestled with this very equation during countless late-night study sessions. "Any questions?" Harrington asked, his tone dripping with the certainty that no one would dare challenge him. The room stayed silent until Sarah's hand shot up, almost against her will. Oh, why did she do it? The second her arm rose, regret flooded her. Every head swiveled, eyes wide. Harrington's eyebrows arched in mock surprise. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice thick with condescension, like honey laced with venom. "I was wondering about the variable transformation in step 4, Sarah said, her voice softer than she meant, trembling just a bit. Wouldn't that create inconsistencies when applied to the boundary conditions? Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Students exchanged glances. Some stifling giggles. Harrington's face hardened. "Your name?" he demanded. "Sarah Mitchell," she replied. "And your department?" Sarah hesitated, her heart pounding. "I work in facilities management." A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd, like a gust of wind through dry leaves. Harrington's expression morphed from surprise to amusement. "Facilities management," he repeated, letting the words linger, sharp and mocking. "How fascinating. And you think you found an error in my work?" Sarah's cheeks burned. "Not an error, exactly. Just a potential complication that maybe—" Harrington cut her off. "Instead of questioning established mathematical principles, perhaps you should stick to more accessible pursuits." Laughter erupted, cruel and cutting. Sarah's face flamed hotter, and she sank back into her seat, wishing the floor would swallow her whole. Had she made a terrible mistake? But oh, how wrong they all were. That moment of humiliation? It was the spark that would ignite an extraordinary revelation. Harrington wasn't finished with her. Sensing an easy target, he doubled down, determined to make an example of Sarah. "Since our guest from facilities management has such confidence in mathematical theory," he said, straightening his tie with exaggerated slowness, "perhaps she'd like to show us her expertise." He gestured to the chalkboard with a flourish. "Come forward, Miss Mitchell." Sarah froze, her heart hammering. Every fiber of her screamed to refuse, to flee, but something deeper pride, maybe, or the sheer exhaustion of being underestimated, propelled her to her feet. The walk to the front of the lecture hall felt like a lifetime. Each step echoed on the hardwood floor, whispers trailing her like a shadow. She took the chalk from Harrington's hand, avoiding his gaze. "Let's make this accessible," he announced loudly, the word dripping with scorn. He scrawled a complex differential equation across the board, his smirk daring her to fail. Sarah recognized it instantly. A beast from advanced multivariate calculus. Tough? Sure. Impossible? Not for her. The real challenge wasn't the equation. It was the public humiliation Harrington intended. "Take your time," he said with fake kindness. "We're all eager to learn from diverse perspectives." More laughter rippled through the room. Sarah's hand trembled as she stared at the board. Behind her, a whisper. "This is painful to watch, was it?" Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a visiting professor from MIT, sat in the front row, her brow furrowed at Harrington's cruelty. But her eyes? They were locked on Sarah, curious, intrigued. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. The numbers and symbols on the board began to shift in her mind, falling into familiar patterns she'd known since childhood. No, she didn't have a fancy degree community. She'd never gone beyond community college. But mathematics? It was her sanctuary, her escape during the lonely nights after her husband left, while her daughter slept, between scrubbing bathrooms and mopping floors. She lifted the chalk and made her first mark. "Perhaps we should simplify," Harrington started to say, but his words died as Sarah began writing, her hand steady now, confident. The room fell silent, the air thick with shock. Her nervousness melted away as she dove into the elegant dance of mathematics. In her mind, she wasn't in a hostile lecture hall anymore. She was in her own world, where numbers made perfect sense. 2 minutes of pure, breathtaking silence later, she finished, placing the chalk down with a soft clink and stepping back. Had she really done it? Harrington stared at the board, his smugness crumbling into confusion. He scanned her work, desperate for a mistake, but there was none. Her solution wasn't just correct, it was elegant, breathtakingly so. "That's correct," he muttered, the words grudging, though anyone with basic calculus training could have managed it. "Really? Dr. Chen's eyebrows shot up, her glance to a colleague saying otherwise. Harrington, refusing to yield, erased the board with a swipe. "Let's try something more challenging," he snapped, his voice sharp. "Something from my current research." He wrote a new equation, one Sarah didn't recognize. This wasn't textbook stuff, it was cutting edge. The kind of theoretical mathematics found in exclusive journals. "This problem ties to quantum computing encryption," he said, his eyes boring into Sarah. "Feel free to return to your seat if it's too much." The challenge was a gauntlet, thrown down with relish. The room held its breath, waiting for her to crumble. But retreat? Not Sarah. She grabbed the chalk again, her resolve blazing. The equation was daunting complex, abstract, with notation she'd never seen in her self-study. Doubt crept in. Had she gone too far? Was Harrington right about her place? The silence grew heavy, students leaning forward, some pitying, others amused. "As I suspected," Harrington said, reaching for the chalk. "Let's move on with the symposium." "Wait." Sarah's voice was soft but firm, pulling the chalk back. Something had sparked a memory from an article she'd read last month. Hunched over a library computer during her lunch break, it had explored quantum encryption mathematics. And now, a pattern emerged from the chaos of symbols. She started writing, tentative at first, then faster, her confidence surging. The room's tension shifted. Students exchanged bewildered looks. Even Harrington's smug grin faltered as Sarah tackled the problem with astonishing skill. Could this really be happening? Can you believe the electricity in that lecture hall? As Dr. Elizabeth Chen leaned forward, her eyes practically glowing with astonishment. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just solving Professor Harrington's impossible equation, she was rewriting the rules with a flair that screamed genius. Her approach, unconventional, daring, and oh so intuitive. Halfway through, though, Sarah hit a wall, her brow furrowing as the equation seemed to taunt her with a dead end. Harrington's lips curled into a smug, "Gotcha" smile. "A valiant attempt," he sneered, reaching for the chalk as if to dismiss her. But Sarah? She wasn't letting go. She clutched that chalk like a lifeline, her mind racing, the room fading into a blur. Was this the moment she'd crumble? Then bam, like a bolt of lightning, it hit her. A breathtaking transformation that would untangle the equation's knots. She started writing again, her hands steady, her confidence surging. The only sound in that hushed hall was the rhythmic scratch of chalk against the board, each mark a defiant step toward victory. When she unveiled her transformation, gasps erupted from the front row where the senior faculty sat. Dr. Chen whispered excitedly to her colleague, who nodded like they'd just seen a miracle. Harrington's face drained of color, his smugness replaced by raw alarm. How could this be happening? A maintenance worker? Outshining him? Impossible. "That's not how it's done," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. But Sarah didn't flinch. She couldn't. She was lost in the flow. That magical state where numbers danced and equations sang. A place she'd known since childhood. She wasn't just solving Harrington's problem, she was making it better, uncovering efficiencies he'd never dreamed of. The room's vibe shifted, like a tide turning. The students who'd snickered earlier, silent now, their faces a mix of confusion and awe. The professors up front, whispering frantically, as if Sarah's work was rewriting their understanding of mathematics itself. Harrington stood there, torn between clinging to his crumbling authority and a grudging fascination with the brilliance unfolding before him. Sarah was so close to finishing when he suddenly stepped forward, his eyes glued to her work. His finger traced one of her transformations, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "This simplification, where on earth did you learn it?" Sarah met his gaze, unflinching. "I didn't learn it," she said, her voice steady. "I just saw it." Their eyes locked in a silent showdown, a renowned professor and a maintenance worker, united by an equation that was shattering every expectation. Could this moment get any more intense? Before Harrington could fire back, Dr. Chen shot to her feet, her voice ringing out. "That's the Lou Takahashi method," she declared, stunning the room. Published just last month in the International Journal of Quantum Mathematics. How could you possibly know it? Every eye turned to Sarah, the weight of their stares like a spotlight. Sarah gripped the chalk, her heart pounding. For years, she'd hidden her gift, convinced no one would believe a single mom scrubbing floors could master advanced mathematics. She'd thrived in the shadows, learning in secret, her passion a private flame. But now, she stood at a crossroads, shrink back into anonymity or step boldly into her truth. What would she choose? "I didn't know it was called the Lou Takahashi method," she said, her voice growing stronger, ringing with conviction. "I've never had training beyond community college." "Impossible," Harrington scoffed, but his voice wavered, lacking its earlier bite. Dr. Chen stepped closer, her eyes scanning Sarah's work with laser focus. "Yet here it is flawless," she marveled, turning to Sarah. "How?" The question hung heavy, demanding an answer. Sarah took a deep breath, the weight of the room's attention pressing against her. In that moment, she thought of her daughter, Lily, grinding through double shifts to save for college, watching her mom dim her own light to avoid judgment. "Mathematics has always made sense to me," Sarah said, her voice clear and simple. "I see patterns, connections, solutions just appear if I look long enough." A student in the third row piped up, voice tinged with disbelief. "But you're in maintenance. Why aren't you?" "Because life happens," Sarah cut in, a spark of steel in her tone. "I had my daughter young. Her father left. I needed a job with health insurance." She gestured to the board, the half-finished solution glowing with promise. "This? It doesn't pay bills or keep a kid healthy." The room fell silent, her words sinking into the academic crowd like a stone into still water. "But why come to this symposium?" Harrington asked, his tone softer now, genuinely curious. Sarah met his gaze, unwavering. "Because I love mathematics. Because learning doesn't stop just because life gets messy." The chalk felt like an anchor in her hand as she turned back to the board. The unfinished equation waited, a challenge and a chance to rewrite her future. She could walk away, slip back into her quiet, predictable life, or finish this and show the world the mind she'd hidden for so long. What would it be? Sarah raised the chalk, her hand steady as a rock. "I'm going to finish this," she said, more to herself than the room full of stunned academics. With that, Sarah Mitchell stepped into her power, ready to blow these elite minds away with what a woman from facilities management could do. She dove back into the problem, the room so quiet the scratch of chalk echoed like thunder. Her mind was a sanctuary of pure mathematics, where titles and degrees meant nothing, only answers mattered. She moved with grace, her hand dancing across the board. When a tricky section loomed, she paused, tilted her head, then boom, she took a bold new approach, crafting a substitution that simplified everything. Dr. Chen gasped aloud. "She's collapsing the quantum variance with dimensional analysis," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "I've never seen it done like this." Harrington stood frozen, his face unreadable as Sarah's solution unfolded. It wasn't just right, it was revolutionary, elegant, the kind of thinking that transcended textbooks. When Sarah boxed the final value and stepped back, the room held its breath. Her solution shone on the board like a beacon. She hadn't just met Harrington's challenge, she'd soared past it. uncovering efficiencies no journal had yet published. Doc, Chen broke the silence, her voice brimming with awe. "That's remarkable," she said, striding to the board. "You've streamlined 3 steps into one with this transformation." She turned to the room, her eyes blazing. "This isn't just correct, it's brilliant." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The students who'd laughed before, now they stared at Sarah with wide-eyed wonder. Several professors discreetly snapped photos of her work, as if afraid it might vanish. Had they ever seen anything like this? Harrington cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the stunned silence. "Well, it's unconventional, but I suppose it has some merit," he muttered, each word seeming to pain him as if pried from his pride. "Merit? Doctor?" Chen spun toward him, eyebrows arched high. "Richard, are you serious? This solution could revolutionize quantum encryption mathematics. It's not just merit, it's publishable, groundbreaking work." Can you imagine the weight of that moment for Sarah Mitchell? Sarah stood there, chalk dust clinging to her fingers, her heart racing yet strangely calm amidst the growing buzz around her. She hadn't set out to prove anyone wrong. Oh no, she'd only tackled the challenge with everything she had, pouring her soul into the numbers. "Ms. Mitchell, Doctor," Chen said, her voice warm yet urgent, as she faced Sarah directly. "Have you written down your other mathematical ideas?" Sarah hesitated, her voice soft. "I have no books, just scribbles I work on at night when I can't sleep." "Notebooks?" The word hung in the air, sparking curiosity. "Notebooks?" Harrington echoed, his professional intrigue finally overtaking his wounded ego. "What kind of math do you dive into?" Sarah shifted, suddenly shy under the spotlight. "Oh, different things," she said, her voice tinged with modesty. "Mostly number theory, some prime factorization algorithms." Doc, Chen and Harrington exchanged a stunned glance. "Prime factorization? That's the beating heart of cryptography research, one of the most elite fields out there. Could this unassuming woman really be unraveling such complex mysteries? I need to see those notebooks," Dr. Chen declared, her tone leaving no room for debate. Before Sarah could respond, a student in the front row leapt to his feet. "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen," he shouted, his hands clapping with fervor. Others joined in, the applause swelling like a wave, filling the lecture hall with a thunderous roar. Sarah's cheeks flushed, not with shame this time, but with a shy embarrassment. She hadn't expected this. Who would have thought her quiet passion could spark such a reaction? As the applause rolled on, Sarah's eyes met those of a young woman in the back row, a student who'd watched every moment with rapt attention. The woman gave a slow, respectful nod, her expression radiating awe, as if Sarah's courage had shifted her world. In that instant, Sarah realized this wasn't just about math. Oh, it was so much more. She'd become visible, truly seen, maybe for the first time in her adult life. Her mind, her potential, her fire, they'd burst from the shadows into dazzling light. Had she ever felt so alive? The applause faded, but the air in that lecture hall had changed forever, not just for Sarah, but for everyone who'd witnessed her leap from overlooked to extraordinary. The symposium had ended an hour ago, yet the room stayed packed. Professors and grad students swarmed Sarah, peppering her with questions about her insights. Dr. Chen stood by her side, almost like a guardian, her presence fierce and protective. "Your grasp of multi-dimensional analysis is unreal," a quantum computing professor exclaimed. "Have you ever thought about formal study?" Sarah's smile was bittersweet. "Thought about it? Sure. Afford it? That's another story." Across the room, Harrington was locked in a heated discussion with the department dean, his hands gesturing wildly. occasionally pointing Sarah's way. His earlier sneer had morphed into something complex, grudging respect, mixed with a hint of defensiveness. Could he admit he'd been wrong? Dr. Chen touched Sarah's arm gently, her voice low. "We need to talk about your future," she said. "MIT has fellowships for rare talents like yours." Sarah's eyes widened. "MIT? Me?" she gasped. "Your gift is 1 in a million, Dr. Chen replied. Letting it go would be a crime against mathematics. The crowd parted as Harrington approached, his silver beard trembling with barely contained emotion. "Mitchell," he said, his tone formal, "the department would like to review your notebooks. If you're open to it, there could be opportunities." His words were careful, not quite an apology, but from a man like Harrington, it was as close as it got. Sarah nodded. "Steady. I'll bring them tomorrow." Dr. Chen shot Harrington a sharp look. "I'll be reviewing them personally," she said, her tone making his jaw tighten. Oh, the tension in that exchange. As the crowd thinned, Sarah gathered her things, her phone flashing with 5 missed calls from the babysitter. Real life was calling, a stark reminder of the responsibilities that had always tethered her dreams. At the exit, a young female student stopped her, voice hesitant. "Miss Mitchell," she said, "I'm in engineering and I just—" "Thank you. For what?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious, "For showing that where you start doesn't define what you know." The student's eyes shone with emotion. "I'm a first-gen college kid from a small town. People judge me too." Sarah's heart swelled. Had she inspired someone without even realizing it? Outside, the evening air felt electric, buzzing with possibility. Sarah took a deep breath, picturing the notebooks stacked at home, brimming with years of late-night mathematical musings. Tomorrow, those private pages would face the scrutiny of the nation's top minds. Terrifying? Absolutely. Exhilarating? Beyond words. For the first time in years, Sarah let herself dream of a future where her brilliance, not her uniform, defined her. 6 months later, Sarah stood before a smaller classroom, her gray cardigan sleeves rolled up as she scribbled a complex theorem on the whiteboard. No longer shrinking or apologizing, she owned the space, her life transformed at lightning speed. Dr. Chen had secured an emergency fellowship. Knowing talent like Sarah's couldn't wait for bureaucracy. 2 of Sarah's theories were already published. Her name bolded as lead author. Can you imagine the pride? Harrington had come around, albeit grudgingly, after departmental debates where he was outvoted. Now, he acknowledged her work, especially as her quantum encryption breakthroughs drew eyes from research hubs nationwide. The real change, though, it was inside Sarah. She no longer hid her intellect or passion, speaking with a quiet authority that came from knowing her worth wasn't tied to degrees, but to her mind's raw power. Her daughter, Lily, had joined the university on a full scholarship, inspired by her mom to chase her dreams unapologetically. As Sarah wrapped up her lesson, a student raised her hand, a young woman, eyes uncertain but question bold. Sarah called on her instantly, remembering the sting of being unseen. "Never fear raising your hand," she told her class. "That question you're scared to ask, it might change everything for you and everyone here." Sarah's journey from invisible to extraordinary tugs at the heart, doesn't it? Genius hides in unexpected places, masked by circumstance, not ability. Who might you be overlooking in your own life? Share your stories of hidden talents in the comments. Where are you reading from today? Loved this tale of triumph and transformation? Subscribe for more stories of life-changing moments. Sometimes, the greatest minds aren't in lecture halls, they're cleaning them. Like, share, and join our community celebrating unsung heroes everywhere.